Daniel Akaju has a request. Please stop talking about the violence in Islam. It is only 5% of our religion.
It's interesting how when a conversation is about Islam, we focus on that 5% instead of the 95% of what Islam is about.
That is a lot of violence, my friend. But we're Christians, filled with the abundant love of God. So let's be generous and grant Daniel's request. Let's take a deep look at the other 95% and learn what Islam is all about. We're now going to figure out what the other 95% of Islam is.
Intercourse with your underage wife. Now, let's assume that our underage wife is a very plump wife who is able to withstand the weight of a man at a nice early age of 6. Now, in a lot of countries, if you are an adult of, say, 30 or 40 or 50, you can't have intercourse with someone who is under the age of 18. So that would give us 12 years of underage intercourse between our 6-year-old bride and her 40 whatever year old groom. This will be his first wife. And of course, in Islam, the needs of a husband are considered to be extraordinarily high. So high, in fact, that women are not allowed to fast without the permission of their husbands, because between sunset to sunset during the day, a man might need to have intercourse with his wife. So we're going to assume very high levels of libido, just as Muhammad assumed. So let's say 20 minutes every single day for 365.25 days a year. So for the 12 years. So we have 1,460 hours of underage intercourse with first wife. Now, after she turns 18, perhaps you might want another. But then you have to split your time between two wives. So your second wife that you marry, if she only gets half as much intercourse while she is underage. We're following the sunnah that Muhammad lays out for Muslims. We're talking about what is in Islam, we're not
people
holding
actually
Muslims
do.
to the standard of what Muslims actually do, but rather what they should do.
Yeah, that's a good point there, because obviously the average Muslim does not commit 27,000 hours of violence in their lives. So let's distinguish what they can do by Muhammad's permission and what they actually do.
Okay, you were asking what the 95% that's not killing is in Islam?
Mm-hmm.
One of the primary things is plunder, that is theft. When at the Hijrah, the Muslims moved to Medina, Muhammad doesn't tell them, okay, now you're going to have to start selling stuff and operating farms and shops and making a living. The only thing that he tells them to do is raid the caravans of the Arab tribes in the area. So plunder, theft, is the livelihood of the Muslims. And then that extends to the period after Muhammad, when the Muslims are conquering everywhere and forcing the non-Muslims, as per the Quran, to pay the jizya and to be responsible for the upkeep of the Muslims. This continues to this day. In Europe, there was even an imam a few years ago who said that you can mug the infidels and steal from them because they're not paying the jizya as they're supposed to, and they owe you your living. So you can lawfully take what is theirs. And so plunder is the means of livelihood in the ideal Islamic state and in the time of Muhammad.
Since this is going to be their full-time wage, let's do standardized 2,000-hour work week. We need not make them work too much. So standardized work weeks in which you are defrauding or plundering or otherwise letting the people that you are jihading against, roughly in that 5% of the time, so that they understand that they're subdued and that they are subject to you. We will just call that plunder/work, because this is a means of livelihood.
Excellent.
Sure, we'll keep on with this sort of trend since Robert Spencer started with plundering. We'll go ahead and go on to slavery. Primarily, beating slaves would be something you find quite a bit in the sources. Al-Daud 1818, where Muhammad is smiling while his father-in-law is beating a slave. And even Muhammad makes a bit of a joke while that goes on. It kind of goes flat, but Try as a joke, at least.
Slave beating in general does not take up an enormous amount of your time. And so I would say that it's perhaps only 10 minutes a day spent beating your slaves. I think that that's fairly reasonable. And you might not have your first slave till you're 20. It really depends. So let's go for
The first point which they spoke about is marrying underage girl and sleeping with them. It is very important to know and to understand when we talk about someone who is underage what we are talking about. The underage person is someone who is too young to engage L or GSLLY in an activity, ESPACIALLY drinking alcohol or having sex. It is important as well to know from which age underage start. A person who is under 18 years old is an underage. It is time to ask ourselves this question: does Islam allow such a thing? Islam doesn't allow such a thing in Quran chapter for verse 6, and test the orphan in their ability until they reach marriageable age. To say that Islam allows to marry an underage girl based on the marriage of Prophet Muhammad and Shia, that can't be true. Based on the following reasons. 1. At that time, marriage at the early years of puberty was accepted in 7th century Arabia, as it was the social norm in all Semitic culture, from Israel to the Arab and all nations in between. 2. As we all know that Prophet Muhammad had enemies who wanted to kill him because of Islam. They never wanted to kill him because of marrying Shia. This proved that Shia was not an underage girl. Finally, point of this is that the age of underage is not the same, but different in most countries. For example, 20 in Japan and Canada is 19 in other countries, 11 in Nigeria. Here's the millionaire question: does not prove that as well at the time of Prophet Muhammad the age of underage was different like us today. The point to which they spoke about is theft. It is important to make it known to the people that they did not produce any evidence for it. Let's ask ourselves this question: does Islam allow stealing? The answer to that question is no, Islam does not allow that. Allah says, as for the thief, the male and female amputate their hands and compose for what they committed as a determined punishment from Allah, and Allah is exalted in might and wise. Let me ask you this question: if someone forcefully stop you from eating the food of the house which you have brought with your own money, then you saw is child holding foods with her hands, and you take it and eat it, is that a stealing, or does that makes you a theft or not, because you are taking what they stopped you from even if you didn't buy it? The third point which they spoke about was jizya. It is very important to know what jizya is and who need to pay it and why. Jizya was a poll tax paid by non-Muslim living in the Muslim countries like us, Muslim paying tax in the non-Muslim countries. The word jizya comes from Arabic word jaza, which means reward or require. In exchange for paying jizya, the Muslim state was obligated to protect those who paid it. The fourth point they spoke about was jihad. What is jihad? Jihad is an Islamic concept that has multiple meaning, including 1. Holy war, a struggle to defend Islam with force, if necessary. 2. Internal struggle, a believer's struggle to live out the Muslim faith as best they can. 3. Building a good Muslim society, a struggle to build a good Muslim society. 4. Personal struggle, a personal struggle in devotion to Islam, especially involving spiritual discipline. 5. Crusade, a crusade for a principle or belief. The word jihad comes from the Arabic root jihada, which means to exert strength and effort. To understand clearly jihad, look at the following example. Every country has soldiers for this reason: to have war and to defend themselves when their enemies attack them. The fifth points they spoke about was slavery in Islam. We all know for someone to be taken as a slave that will only happens only at wars. Now let ask us this question: does Islam allow us to mistreat the slave? No, Islam doesn't allow that. Instead, Islam encourages its followers to treat slaves as if they are own brothers. Let's look at the following examples. Surah 2 verse 177: one of the righteous is to free a slave. Sunan ibn Majah book 33, hadith 34 is about that the slaves is our brothers, and we should feed them what we eat and clothe them from what we wear. If you love this context, don't forget to like, comment, and to subscribe. I'm your brother Suleiman, and a Muslim responds. See you next time.